what does Jurassic Park have in common with The Little Mermaid? The answer is more than you would think. In fact, all stories share the same basic elements. When we study those elements, we can tell better stories. All stories share a few basic elements. Now let's be clear, we're not talking about a formula. These terms are meant to be descriptive, as in they describe something that happens in every story imaginable. The goal with these terms is not to assert that a good story has cookie-cutter sections, but rather to use these tools to assess what a good story does well. That said, let's dive in. The chart you see in front of you is basic plot structure. This is the path that every story follows. At the beginning, we have exposition. You meet the main characters, you see their world, and you learn what normal life is like for them. What comes next is initial action. Initial action is the moment in a story where the hero leaves normal behind. It can be because something happens to them, or it could be because of a choice they make. Either way, they leave their normal life behind, and what happens next is the meat of the story. The next section is the rising action. This is where the tension begins to build as the main character faces off against the story's conflict. They may have successes, they may have defeat, they may grow, but ultimately there is a sense that the story is getting more and more dire as it heads towards its climactic moment. Once the tension is built up, we reach a climax. This is the part of the story where the main character overcomes the conflict definitively. You could say it's where the hero wins. Of course, if you're writing a tragedy, it's the opposite. The hero loses, the conflict wins. There are many ways to handle a climax in a story, and as we get to advanced plot structure, we will talk about those. But this definition works for today. Once the conflict is overcome, the story begins tying up loose ends. The first way you can do this is with what's called falling action. Basically, this is where a story does what it takes to get you to a satisfying resolution. The resolution is the final moments of the narrative, where it becomes clear to the audience there's no more story left to tell. You could think of this as the happily ever after moment. In our plot series, we're going to dive deep into these elements. But let's start by illustrating them with The Little Mermaid. In the beginning of the story, we meet Ariel and we see what normal life is like. That's the exposition. We meet her family, we meet her friends, and we meet the villain. The initial action is when Ariel goes to see Ursula. She makes a deal that will allow her to go to the human world, but is going to force her to leave normal life behind. You know how the story goes. She's got 3 days to get smooched before she loses her dream and her voice. The tension that builds while she's trying to get kissed is the rising action. When Ursula realizes she might lose out on this deal, she confronts Ariel in a final epic battle. The climax. After Ursula is defeated, there are not many loose ends to tie up, and so we jump to the happily ever after. A wedding. That's the resolution. If this concept is new to you, break down Jurassic Park in the comments and show how it lines up with the categories we discussed. If you're a veteran writer, tell us how understanding plot structure has helped or hindered you in the past. Here at Lyon Country, we believe that storytelling is a major part of what makes us human. We want to help you do it better, so every Saturday morning we're putting out content on the craft of writing. Feel free to subscribe so that you don't miss anything we put out, and until then, grab a pen, grab some paper, and write yourself human.